Welcome, everybody, to the IC Topic Chat today. It is the end of April 2026. Where's the time gone? I feel like I say that every single week. Meg Gassanov is with us today. She's with Strategic Measures, and she's going to talk to us about scaling and evaluation practice. And I threatened to talk about all of her backstory that I don't even know because she's going to share it. She says, just tell them I'm an evaluator and I'm happy to be here. So I think I'll just leave it at that and not make anything up about her backpacking through the Andes or something silly like that because I'm just making that up at this point. But Meg, why don't you take it away before I embarrass myself some more?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here today, everyone. I've been having the fortune of joining this group from time to time over the last almost 3 years. This year it'll be my third year as an independent consultant. I can't go every Thursday because I have a pre-existing commitment on Thursdays, but when that doesn't need to happen, then happy to join the group here. So a little bit about myself. I'm in Ontario, Canada, and prior to being an independent consultant, I worked primarily for the City of Toronto. And also, I'm involved in some university settings as well. And right now, working on helping to develop a new evaluation certificate program at one of the universities in Toronto. So that's pretty exciting. In Canada, we have credentialed evaluation. So I'm a credentialed evaluator and then also do some strategy planning in addition to my evaluation work. So today I want to chat a little bit about scaling an evaluation practice. This is very much a live issue that I deal with, and I am not promising to have any answers. These are very much live questions for myself as well. I'm looking forward to our discussion at the end of my presentation because I really, would love to hear from you and how you've been handling these different challenges along the way. So I also do want to start off by acknowledging that this might feel a bit like a strange time to talk about scaling because I know that a lot of independent consultants and small firms aren't sitting around going, oh, how do I manage all of this growth that's coming my way? Um, Many of us are asking more immediate questions like where is the next contract coming from, or how do I stabilize my revenue? How do I make good decisions when the market feels uncertain? So I am not approaching scaling today as how do we all get bigger? That might not be the right question, and it's probably not the question that a lot of us are living with right now. But I do want to think about scaling more broadly as a set of choices we make about the kind of business that we're building, even during lean periods. So sometimes that means growing, and sometimes it means deepening or narrowing, repositioning ourselves, partnering, protecting quality, or simply creating enough structure so that when the work hopefully does come back in a rush, we can respond without burning out. So today is more about making intentional choices about growth, stability, and sustainability in our evaluation practices. So scaling is not just one thing. I want to go a little bit deeper into these directions that scaling can look like because they're not just labels. You might recognize this as the BCG growth matrix. I've tried to adapt it a little bit just to chat about evaluation. So you can see here we have a 2x2 matrix in terms of offerings, both new and existing, and then our markets or our clients, also both new and existing. And so when you have the matrix here, we have 4 different ways of growth. So I'll start with volume. That's probably the most obvious kind of growth. This means more of the same kind of work. So more evaluation contracts, more clients, more projects, maybe more subcontractors. Then if we go down to existing offerings and new markets, that's reach. And reach is when you take the work that you already do into new places. So this could look like moving into new sectors or new geographies, maybe having new funders that you're seeking money from, or new client types. So for us evaluators, it might mean moving from health into housing, or from nonprofits into government, or vice versa, or from local work into national work or international work. This can be attractive because you're not reinventing what you do, but you're understanding a new context or a new language, maybe new buyer expectations. Then moving over to scope. Scope is when you expand what you offer. So it's you're starting new offerings. You're you're having new services for people who already know you. So this can happen a lot in evaluation. So a client might ask for an evaluation and then they start moving more into strategy kinds of questions, or maybe they want you to facilitate something, or and then maybe help you with implementation support. So this can be a very natural growth path, but it can also quietly, stretch your capacity and your identity. And then the last quarter here is diversification, and this is your biggest leap. So you're doing new services in new markets. For example, you might move into teaching or credential-based training programs. Or maybe you're going to move from evaluation into AI consulting without prior work in that space. Or maybe you're going to start something like a social enterprise or a platform alongside your consulting practice. So the diversification is usually the riskiest path because you're learning a new type of work and a new audience at the same time. It still definitely can be worth doing, but it deserves more caution. And then I do want to add a fifth category you can see at the bottom. And this is about growing our impact. For evaluation consultants, growth isn't always about doing more work. It can mean increasing the value or the usefulness or the credibility or the influence of the work that you're already doing. So, for example, you might want to become a thought leader. Maybe you're going to publish something, or maybe you can do teaching, or maybe becoming a B Corp if that aligns with your values and your market positioning. So, these 4 or 5 areas are different ways you can grow. So, the question that you should ask yourself is not just, do I want to grow, but which direction of growth is like interesting to me, and what would that direction require for me? So I just would like you to take a second to think about this. And I'm not going to ask you to share this out loud, but do take a moment to think about your own evaluation practice. And for some of you, there may be a clear increase in demand, but for others, things might feel a little flat or uncertain, and both are useful signals. So what I would like you to think about is, what kinds of opportunities are actually showing up for you right now? Are you seeing more of the same kinds of projects? Are you being pulled into new sectors or new types of work? Are clients asking you to do things slightly outside your usual scope? Because even in a slower market, there are still patterns in the work that does come your way. And these patterns can shape your business. And you want to be intentional about them as well. So this is really about noticing what direction is your practice already being nudged in. And the next questions are whether or not you want to follow that direction. Okay, so once you see that growth can take different forms, then our next question is, should I actually pursue that growth? This is not a checklist. It's some tensions that we probably want to think about, some things to navigate. Often we have incomplete information. So I'm just going to walk through some of the things that I found have come up most often for myself. So the first tension that I'm figuring out is demand versus noise. This one is uh, perhaps particularly important because in a tough market, maybe any opportunity can start to feel like demand. So an RFP comes out, or a client mentions a possible project, someone else seems busy, and suddenly, you're feeling like I better respond to this. And that can be a challenge because when work seems uncertain, then you can, get pulled towards anything that looks like an opportunity. But not all opportunities are equal. Some are signs of real demand, so repeat clients, referrals, maybe clients asking you to do more of the kind of work that you want to be known for. That kind of demand is really important because it suggests that you have trust and fit. But there might be some other opportunities that might be a little bit more like noise. They can be interesting, viable, they might even be worth taking for sure. but they don't necessarily point to a direction that you want to build around. So, in evaluation consulting, I mean, I find this comes up quite often. There are opportunities that look, good at the surface, but maybe they're not quite the right fit. So there's work that we can do, but that doesn't necessarily strengthen the practice that I'm trying to build. So the question isn't just should I take this on or could I take this on? The better question is this a pattern I want to build on or just something I could take on? The second tension is about capacity, but not just in the sense of time. It's really about how we deliver our work and where the pressure shows up when demand increases. So if demand started to increase, where would things start to feel strained? For many of us evaluation consultants, that can show up in a few very predictable places. My time and availability, how quickly I can respond to my clients, managing kind of the day-to-day work of an evaluation in terms of data collection, coordinating participants, doing the analysis, having time to make sense of messy data, writing those reports, and then keeping track of multiple projects all at one time. And then don't forget the final quality review where everything still needs to go through you before it goes out the door. What this, shows is that, not just how busy you are, but how your work is structured. And in many consulting practices, especially the solo ones, work is highly concentrated in you. So it depends on your judgment, your interpretations, your relationships, your standards, and that can work really well until demand increases. So I guess the question here is like, what parts of the work depend too heavily on you as an individual person? Because ultimately, that's what determines your capacity, not just how many hours you have. We all have only 24 hours in a day, but how much of the work can realistically move forward without you being directly involved in every single step. And the third tension is alignment versus risk. And this is one that can be easy to overlook because growth decisions are very rarely made all at once. It's usually one opportunity at a time. So you say yes to a larger project, and then you bring in a subcontractor, then you take on more coordination. And then the next project is bigger again. And over time, those decisions start to change your practice. So they can shape the kind of work that you do, what your business becomes known for, and maybe most importantly, the role that you yourself play in the work. For evaluation consultants, I mean, many of us built our practice around our own judgments, our own methods, our relationships, our standards. And even if we don't love, every single part of the hands-on work, like data collection, coding, analysis, whatever, we often feel responsible for it because it's our name on the final product. So when you grow, the question becomes, what are you willing to let go of and what still needs to stay close to you? Because you can bring in other people and that can create capacity, but it also does create some sort of risk. Like, will the work meet your standards? Will people be available to meet when you need them? Will the client experience still feel consistent? And how much review and rework will I have to do? So this is where alignment matters too. So growth can be financially attractive, but it also can move you away from the parts of the work that you really enjoy, or into a role that feels less like evaluation and more like project management or business development or quality assurance. So some people might really like that, but it's not neutral. And that's just what I'm trying to say here is that some growth decisions have implications. And some of these decisions are easier to reverse, but other decisions are harder to reverse, especially once clients expect a certain scale or your business becomes known for really large, complex work, or people rely on you, partners rely on you. So the question is not just will this growth opportunity work, but it's also what do I commit to if this growth opportunity does work out? And if you decide to move into a specific growth direction, then the question becomes about how do we want to grow? And again, here we have some trade-offs. And in consulting, this can really shape what your practice becomes. So the first question is very concrete, like who's actually going to do this work? For many of us, the default answer is me, and that has real benefits. I control the quality, I control the client relationship, the analysis, the writing, etc. But it does have that hard ceiling on capacity. So you can bring in subcontractors or associates. And I know we have specific IC topic chats about this in more detail, which you can look into. But really briefly, you can bring in subs, and this is a very flexible path. It's probably the most flexible path for small firms. It's something that I do myself. You bring in specialized expertise or extra capacity when you need it. This requires, clarity of scope, clarity of expectations, strong communication, and then often review time as well. You can also bring in staff in-house, like employees. So employees are a little bit different because you have a little more continuity and internal learning, but they also have a bigger commitment for you as an employer now, because now you're responsible for payroll and workload and keeping enough work to come in. Students and interns can be a great addition. I'm starting with my first intern this summer, so I'm excited about that. They're really helpful for defined tasks. You can give them like a document review, or, test the survey or clean my data. They're not usually free capacity. And so you still need structure and supervision, a little more training, and probably a little more quality control as well. But it's very nice if you also have that kind of a teaching vibe inside of you and want to be able to pass that on to the next generation of evaluators. And then there's fractional support, bookkeepers, project coordinators, maybe marketing help, operation support. These roles may not deliver evaluation work, but they can create capacity by taking some of that business management work off your plate. So here the question is not only who can help, but it's also what kind of work can safely move away from me and what still needs my judgment. The second thing we should think about is how repeatable our work is. And this is pretty interesting in evaluation because a lot of our work is inherently very custom. And often repeatability gets framed as something you lose when you want to maintain quality. And that's sometimes true, but actually there's another way to think about it, because repeatable work can actually be one of the most strategic parts of a consulting practice. And I think it may have been Anne who raised my mind to this idea. Are there things you're already doing that you can, box and package for others, like workshops that you've refined and you can deliver that multiple times? Training sessions or lectures you can give. Maybe there's tools or templates or frameworks that you've already developed. And these kinds of offerings make really good use of the work you've already done. It reduces the amount of new thinking you need to do every time, and it creates a different kind of efficiency, not just in time, but also in your own cognitive effort, which I find draining sometimes. And especially when we talk about consulting, there's a real difference between, designing something from scratch and delivering something that you've already refined. At the same time, if everything's too standardized, then you can lose your responsiveness to the context and some of what might make your work valuable to clients. So the question here again is, where does it make sense to build that repeatability? And then where does customization actually matter? And there we go. Here we go. This decision here is a little bit different about who does the work. This is not about capacity, it's more about capabilities. And in evaluation consulting, there's often things that a client needs that sit kind of beside evaluation or adjacent to evaluation, but maybe it's not your core strength, or even if it is within evaluation, maybe it's not your core strength. For example, facilitation in multiple languages, Indigenous engagement. Maybe you really need some deep subject matter expertise, or communications or design, or maybe sector specific credibility. So some of these things you can try to build in-house over time. Obviously, there's the pros of it, which is, you have more control, more consistency, more internal learning, but it does take time and investment, and then also enough repeat demand to justify that. Or when those projects come around, you can partner with others who already bring those strengths. and partners can help you take on those more complex projects, enter some new spaces, and offer an overall stronger team than you could offer alone. Uh, just like everything, there's pros and cons. So there are some risks with partnering. You need to make sure you're aligned on your methods, on your ethics, your timelines, your standards for quality, clarity on your roles and how you communicate with your clients, and then ownership of your final product as well. So in evaluation, these things really matter because the work isn't just technical. It involves judgment and interpretation and trust and credibility. So here we want to ask not just who can help me deliver this, but which capabilities do I want my practice to own, and which ones am I better off accessing through trusted partners? And finally, looping to what Matt was talking about today, maybe scaling back will also be part of our thought process here. Not all work deserves the same investment, and I do want to chat a little bit about scaling back through a portfolio lens. So all of us as evaluators have different areas that we practice in. Some of us maybe do, qualitative research, quantitative research, performance measurement, teaching, workshops, consulting. So if you think about the different ways that you do your work, we can think about those as different portfolios in your practice. And this is the BCG portfolio matrix. It asks organizations to look at what they should invest in. They call that the stars, what they should maintain, and they call that cash cows, what they should rethink, which are question marks, and then stop, which they call the dogs. For consulting practice, I'm going to adapt it a little bit and look at two things, demand and fit. And when I talk about fit, I'm also including things like your energy, the sustainability of it, your capabilities in that area, the quality that you can deliver. So here again, we have a 2x2 matrix with demand being high and low, and then the fit or the value being high and low. So some work has high demand and high fit with you. So it aligns with the kind of practice that you want to build. You can deliver it well and it feels sustainable. So this is work that you want to protect and invest in. Some work has low demand, but strong fit. That might be worth nurturing selectively, especially if it fits the kind of work that you want more of. If we look at the top right corner, some work has low demand, or at the bottom corner, some work has low demand and poor fit. So those are the easiest places to scale back or to stop offering it, to redesign it, or maybe just stop chasing those opportunities. And then the hardest category is this high demand work that is poor fit. That might be work that brings in revenue, or it might look successful from the outside, but it creates a lot of strain. Maybe it's too time sensitive, too hard on staff, too much, like too emotionally demanding, too difficult to do well at scale. For example, maybe you have a type of evaluation project that clients love, but you're always working nights and tight timelines to get that delivered. Or maybe you're getting repeat work, but it's all coming from one client and they're very demanding. Or maybe you're winning similar contracts, but you're doing all the work yourself. So or it could be too much of a good thing. So when I mean fit, I just don't mean strategic fit. I also mean whether that work is sustainable for you and for your practice. So here, if you look at your different areas of your evaluation work, you want to ask yourself, what should I continue? And what am I continuing simply because I've always done it or because I'm afraid to stop it? And what could I potentially stop doing? So just in closing, I'll close with a few things that I find myself coming back to from time to time. Um, Interchangeable. The second is that not all growth is worth pursuing. So some opportunities might look really good in the moment, but they actually don't strengthen your practice over time. And then the last one, which I think is the hardest one, is that the goal is not necessarily to grow more. It's to build the right kind of practice for the work that I want to do and the role I want to play in it. And that can look different for each one of us. So I'd love to open this up for discussion. Here are some prompts, but we can take it in whatever direction feels most useful. So thank you.
Yep. Well, thanks, Meg. And I'm really excited to get into this discussion. This was a great presentation and it gave a lot of big ideas. I'd love to get into some more specifics and have, I'm going to pause the recording in just a second or stop the recording. But I'd love to hear how people have gone through these processes. And there's a lot of people here who have expanded, who've grown and developed. And, how did you do that? Or how did you change? How did you switch into a different line of business? Why did you choose to expand the work that you're already doing? How did you develop within your current clients or expand to new clients? I'd love to hear some more from others. I see Nikki's got her hand up. Nikki, we're on recording. I'm happy to have you on recording, or you could wait till afterwards. Up to you.
Oh, I'll wait my turn. Sorry, I didn't know I
There's no
raised.
turns.
Oh,
You'll be first. I promise you. I was just gonna. Do you want to be on the recording or not? Either way is fine.
uh, I would just like to say, well, there's stuff that I don't want to be on the recording. I'll
Okay.
just say that. But I'll just say generally, I really appreciated this session. I think that we could dig a lot deeper into some of these areas, especially when, Meg, when you talked about like it might be too much of an emotional demand. I think that people who are in the service industry, I think women tend to this a bit more, and there are probably a lot of other characteristics with over functioning or doing too much and having, these feelings of fear or guilt or whatever, that come out. But I think the social emotional aspect of this is really huge. And I printed out your here, and I'm gonna put that right in front of my computer to say, is this serving? On a last note, I will say that as someone who comes from an indigenous paradigm, I really have to think about, is this regenerative? Is this nurturing? And it's really hard to go back, but if you sort of can reflect within yourself, it helps me make business decisions. And we have grown a lot, and we grew a lot since. We could have probably quadrupled our business after COVID, while COVID was happening. And so really have to make sure that we can protect and invest and be working on things. I call it legacy work. And so those are the decisions I make. And I realize that 55 years old, I have lots of lived years experience. I have a little bit more privilege than somebody who may be first starting out, but this is an unexpectedly great session, and that's no shade on you. I'm just like, oh, I didn't know how much I needed this today. So thanks. I see Tig, you are continuing to rock. You're my favorite station every Thursday. Woot woot.
Same bat channel, same bat time every week, right? Well, I'm going to pause the recording. So I'm just going to give a little thank you. Applause, everybody. Thanks for the heart, Jason, um, for Meg. Great presentation. But if you're out there in YouTube land, we'll see you later. But if you're live, stick around.